Phase 2 FMP. A lot of excitement on that this past week with, we've been waiting for 2 years now since they closed 16 over on Post Avenue for Phase 2 money to be able to start planning the renovations to the building, to look at getting the kids back there, and we're probably assuming that it goes through. We had, I don't know if you saw some of the, we had.
I did, I saw what you sent out.
I thought it got voted on the other night.
It did.
The mayor shot it down because she wasn't sure where the money was going to be
Yeah,
directed properly.
They did some re-discussions, and now she's on board with the modified version of the bills.
Okay.
And I think David Gant is still opposing it from what I read in the paper this morning. But I guess it still has to get passed in Albany, right?
By the end of the week. And it looks like it probably will pass with the revisions that the mayor wanted. I don't know whether David supports it or not. That's what it's looking
Yeah,
like. All I know
she got her voice in it. That was the main thing I heard.
But there's some major problems with the whole project. There's some very serious problems with it. I guess the FBI investigation is ongoing. Still, yeah. We're talking the largest public works project in the history of the city. And clearly, most of the jobs, I think about 5,000 jobs in the first phase, went outside of this community. Most of the money went outside of this community. Not many people from the city were hired, and certainly not many people of color. That's a big problem. That's a big issue. Even they, in my view, should have been able to create some jobs for the youth. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. Even the revisions that all I know is what I read in the newspaper. The kinds of things that the mayor's that she wants, the amendments to the legislation. From what I understand, we're talking about having a I don't know the formal title, I can't think of it right now, but it's really a person who's a compliance officer who becomes part of the Facilities Modernization Board, but not a voting member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't get then what influence that person really has, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the other part of it is that the mayor would, the contracts would sort of be approved by her. So I guess that's where the real power lies.
Who's the officer, the compliance officer?
Yeah. So, but how that really functions is another question, because it's not simple. It's not a simplistic project. We're talking about dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts and so forth. So I don't know about that whole process.
Yeah, I was, I think it was Communications Committee meeting I was at on Monday. I think it might have been Robin Detman that brought it up. Apparently there are only a few companies nationwide who get involved in doing these school renovation type projects. It's not, it's not the same outfit that's building a housing tract down the street that gets into it. These are people who come in and specialize at renovating these monstrosities of buildings. And
well, I don't know about that. And there are several local companies, the Chase, Necessi, there's another one. There's 3 or 4 large companies that are getting the bulk of the work here. They get the bulk of the work in all construction projects, all large construction projects. They're not from anywhere else. They're from here.
yeah, I'm wondering, are they subcontracted?
They do
They're subcontracted probably by these national outfits that come in, and that may be where the rub is, that they aren't making use of all the right subcontractors.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what the right means, but the focus should be on local.
Yeah.
And should be on people who have historically been systematically left out of the process, specifically so-called minorities, women,
I think it's actually denied, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of left out.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. And nobody's really talking about that. That's part of what the mayor started to talk about. That part is good. She's talking about it, I can't see the things that, maybe I just don't understand the additions that she wanted to the legislation, and my mind still don't address that. But maybe she knows something that I don't know.
Yeah.
It should be voiced or written down fully, then us all understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the things that I was at the coffee and conversation with the superintendent, was that yesterday?
Yeah, interesting.
Boy, time's going by fast. One of the things that I mentioned to him was the fact that, for instance, we were talking about the Phase 2 monies and some of the problems with Phase 1. And I said, I was really taken aback when I was looking at the school 17. I went over there when they had their open house, and I got shown around I think it was the custodian had some time and took me around, and we're finishing off the talk, and he says, I asked him about air conditioning in the school, and he said, no, the rooms don't have air conditioning. He's got air conditioning in his office, and I think central office, the main central office has air conditioning, maybe the library, but they hadn't put air conditioning in all the school, the classrooms, and that to me seems incredible. I mean, we've been talking for years about having the year-round schools and multiple use for the school buildings. You'd like to be able to do anything you want in the summer with them, and we're redoing the school. And I mean, if you've been over to 17, they put a lot of effort into that. The gym that they added to that school is bigger than my grade school was when I went to school. And they didn't put air conditioning in, and I mentioned that to him, and he says, that's one of the reasons that there's all this talk about the overruns, because he says, when I came in, I looked at all these projects, and anything that hadn't been so far along that we couldn't put air conditioning in, I insisted they put air conditioning in, and yes, that brought the price up, but at least it got the right features, because boy, and you look at all that we're talking about, lengthening the school year and having summer school. You can't have kids come into a non-air conditioned school in the summer, because it gets pretty darn hot in those buildings in the summer, and expect them to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and paying attention to the subject that they're taking.
Well, I think the superintendent's doing some politicking. The overruns are not just the result of him insisting that air conditioning be, included.
No, I'm sure that there are other issues too.
In fact, it appears, I don't know, we'll see what the FBI investigation reveals, but it's clearly it appears that there's straight theft going on. People submitting.
Rigging.
Yeah. And so, it's clear.
Been
That's
happening
what's
for
going
decades,
on.
and it's nothing new.
That's not new. That's right. It's very old, and nobody really
Just
talks
people
about
don't keep
it.
secrets as much anymore. We have a world of information now, and people start bringing things to light now, so.
Yeah.
Probably the best thing that the mayor can do is make sure that there is as much transparency to everything that's going on as possible, that people can review whatever contract, sit in on meetings, and not have all closed door stuff going on.
Seems like that's what she's trying to move toward, but we don't want it after the fact.
Yeah.
Right? We want it as it's happening.
I think people need to feel that they have faith in the city and the people that are supposed to be doing the management and helping. They don't want to feel left out, and they don't want to feel like they're manipulated, or always a lot of deception to it. So the quicker she handles it and the more public she makes it, probably the easier it can be than doing the opposite,
Let's see what happens.
One of the issues that was also in that letter that I sent out there was the short distance busing question, which we had, when we got started with the School 16 renovation, School 16 issue, early on, I don't know if it was from talking to Ralph Spezio or just sounding each other out, but the thought of getting back to neighborhood schools was one of the big things that we were all saying to each other. And one of the things that Ralph had done when he came to 16 back in the 90s was to stop the busing. And that was one way of making sure that it was a neighborhood school. And he did all sorts of things, such as he also had worked with the police department to make sure that they were changing their shift at the right time so that kids were not walking home just when the police shifts were changing, so that there'd be people around to keep an eye on things. And so he was able to get a lot of, a truly neighborhood school, and he started a neighborhood association there to make sure that there was a neighborhood association for the school to deal with, and so we've been kind of saying neighborhood schools, can we stop the busing? But then the more you talk with parents and with the school administration, people are tuned into school choice now, and you can't really say let's stop the busing. But also, one of the reasons that there's as much busing going on as there is, from what we're hearing, is the fact that people are afraid of having their kids walk to school. We've got probably about 2 generations of people who have never walked to school, out there now. Most of today's parents, their parents didn't walk to school because it was back in the 60s when everybody was looking at using busing for integration purposes and for evening out poverty in the city school districts, and it didn't quite work out the way we all had hoped. But after all these years of people not really being used to their streets, the only thing they hear from the news media and newspaper and whatnot is every time there's a mugging or a killing, you hear about it, but all the good things that are happening out there you don't pay attention to. So they're afraid for their kids, and we did Eric Steffens, who has been here talking about the walking school bus program. I was out walking around school 19 with him and his group to just take an assessment of the streets, and you look at some of the crossing that the kids have to go across, and school guards that are there, and the signage for slowing down traffic, and there's some improvements to be made to really have the streets as safe as you'd like to have them for kids. But one of the things but trying to get that walking school bus going, they've been trying to get enough volunteers to do it once a month. You need to do it every day if you're going to have a walking school bus really work. And they'd love to do it to give the kids more exercise, but it's going to be a while coming, I think, because of trying to find the volunteers that you need, for one thing. But one of the things that the superintendent has been talking in response to our pushing for the neighborhood schools is, can we get busing agreements, get the state to change the law so that they can be reimbursed for half a mile or more distance busing. So right now, if my child is going to go to school and I want him on a bus, I've got to find a school that's 1.5 miles away from where I live to be sure that he can get a bus. And for many parents, it gives them a way to get the kid out the door and onto the bus so they can get off to work, and make sure that the child is safe. Unfortunately, it also puts them in a school that's too far for them to walk, and they may or may not have a car to drive there in the evening for a school event. So it would be nice if we can get the half-mile busing instituted, and one would think that it should cost less rather than more, because most of the parents are already finding a place to bus their child to, and it's it's probably further than they would if they could bus, if the local school were good, and if they could have them on a bus to go there.
So the last part was, of what you said was most critical, if the local school
Yeah.
is good. First of all, we have to, I'm hearing, I don't know what your overall focus is, but I'm hearing a lot of piecemeal. And so, in terms of the work that we're trying to do, we start from the point that the system is in crisis. The whole system is in crisis. And we really do need to take a systemic approach as opposed to being piecemeal all over the place. That's why we're talking about building movement. That's not rhetoric, though. We're talking about substantial numbers of people working consistently, cooperatively, collaboratively around agreed upon goals, strategies, and tactics that are aimed at impacting the entire system. Busing is a historical issue, and we have to look at the history of what happened. That was about so-called integrating the schools. That's what it was about. And so after white flight and middle class flight took place, that no longer made any sense at all.
Yeah.
And so in the process of that, some of the former neighborhood schools were undermined and were ghettoized and so forth. And so what we need to be talking about now is how do we put good schools in every neighborhood and really, for all practical intents and purposes, for the most part, do away with busing. But we have to be real about the politics. There are people whose interests are wrapped up in continued busing. They don't intend to just go away. They don't intend for busing to stop. And so we gotta talk about all these issues, and those are the kind of issues that the superintendent and the board need to be leading on. Not just exploring that we might do this or we might do that and so forth. No. What is the systemic approach that we need to take to develop good schools in every neighborhood? We can't do it all at once, but we have to have a starting point. So it's almost like we don't want to come to grips with certain realities that we all know exist. We know that many parents are not involved. Right. And we could say all we want. They need to be involved. Yep. Home is the first teacher, parents the first teacher. Right. That's right. That's what should be.
One-on-one, they'll agree with you on that too.
Yeah.
But implementing it to fit into their lifestyle and what their true life is a different thing.
So I'm talking about what the real objective reality. No one will argue that learning shouldn't begin at home, that parents shouldn't be first teachers. No one will argue against that. But that's not the reality. And we don't have anything at our disposal to make it a reality. So we have to, not accept that large numbers of parents are not accountable or can't be accountable. It's not always a matter of they don't want to be, right? And then we have to ask the question, then what does that inform us to do as a system? Since we know that and we can't change it immediately, how do we get the support under the children? That's where we have to stay focused.
The bigger issue, systemically, the system won't allow that change also.
Well, there are a lot of blocks, you're right. So, and this is not to excuse parents of their responsibility and so forth, but we have to come to grips with, we can't make parents do things. We can help, and that should be a part of the systemic approach, is that we have ongoing working relationships with parents, and not only biological parents, but biological family members, but the preacher, the
village who takes accountability for the child too.
So until we begin to think systems approach, we can help a few children here and a few children there and so forth, but unless I'm missing something, we'll be sitting here 50 years from now still doing this. It's a systems issue, and nothing other than a systems approach will address it effectively and efficiently, which comes back to our idea about the need for a movement, a legitimate, real, we need hundreds if not thousands of people working
Yeah.
together,
Without being
collectively.
viewed as anarchy by those who are in control.
We don't,
But,
right.
you know, I know what
Well,
you're saying.
that's
But
another-
that's what they're looking at.
That's another part of this that, in my view, we got to come to grips with. We're not going to get change without confrontation.
Yep.
There are many people this is working just fine.
For me.
This is very lucrative for many people.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Many of those who say they want change most, this is very lucrative for them. And they're really talking out of both sides of their mouths. And all you have to do to test it is watch what they do, not what they say.
Yep.
Watch what they do and what they don't do. And so there's no example that I know of in the history of the world where people are attempting to make fundamental social, economic, political, cultural change and have been able to do it successfully without confrontation.
There was one group, but they did have confrontation. Was it the Black Panthers try to do that? And they had confrontation.
So
about it.
there were many groups,
Yeah.
Black Panthers
It was
one.
at the basic, doing the breakfast programs and
Right.
other things that they really
Did
helped
that.
their communities.
Right,
And it was taken out of context of what they were doing.
right.
That's right. The Panthers, like many organizations in the 60s and 70s, made some mistakes, but they did a lot of work that we can learn from. They did a lot of good work that we can learn from. You know, there are like scores of relatively small groups working on the same issues and so forth. But we never really come together on an ongoing basis and just put on the table, what are some common issues that we can all work around that really will matter, that really will lead to systemic change. We don't do that. Instead, and I'm including us, the groups that I'm a part of, we all got our separate agendas, and they actually do intertwine, and they do, but we don't have the discussion about how we can have a collective agenda, a community agenda. I mean, that's what the summit, that's what it was all about. We're going to create a community agenda, but community of who? Of the people who are part of Free and not the rest of the community. So we need to move
There
toward
are
that.
a lot of people who weren't at that summit who need to get involved to really make it happen.
Yeah, and we got too many tables.
Also, fundamentally, I think one huge part of the issue is why can't we do this, why can't we communicate, is to look at the larger societal changes since the 60s. Influences of technology, people have been, we're all isolated. We don't talk to our neighbors,
But we'll text them.
So and that's how the ruling elite squashed the rebellion in the 60s. And they're stronger than they ever were before. Even in the past 10 years, they're stronger again. And before all this talk about change and reform, they were already profiting off of the system. Now they're profiting at a whole nother level by running this change. It's just ongoing.
No doubt, but I would also argue that we're weaker than ever. Those of us who say we're on the left or whatever, I'm not into those labels, but those of us who are not down with the corporate agenda and all of that. But we even feed into that. Like charter schools, look, I don't blame any parent for choosing what they think is best for their child. Every parent has that right, even though I'm trying to keep mine in this traditional system, which I know is wicked and is probably not in his best interest. I got to stay on top of it and so forth. But charter schools, that's part of the corporate agenda.
Oh, it's corporate run.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a corporate
and
structure.
it's a key pillar in their agenda. That's a key pillar in their agenda.
But
It's
I don't
not
think by them being there and giving him the curriculum, I go, okay, you do everything. I'm still right there with
Yeah.
you. Because sometimes with those charters, they're giving him unreal work
Yeah.
as well. And he would come to me some nights crying and say, how am I gonna get this done? You mean how we are gonna get this done? We're gonna do this together. You're not by yourself. You weren't by yourself before. We're gonna do this together. So because there's other challenges with charter no one knows, and I know a lot about it, and it's like, it's not easy. These kids feel like, wait a minute, I went to a basic school, I got here, and everything got harder.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated, I can't do all this, how am I gonna, so it's tough. For some kids, it does challenge them, and it makes them work hard and excel. And some go the opposite way.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a board, it's a committee,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand that, and with me working at the Y, I work with the Y as a board's committee, same kind of thing. But I see great things that happen there too.
Yeah.
So I want these organizations to help these people, but you've got to tell them who to help.
Yeah.
You've got to tell them what you need
Yeah.
for them to do, you know?
What I'm talking about is, collectively, charter schools are having an impact on the broader community that's making things worse. Because they are selective in terms of who they accept and so forth. And even when they accept young people who don't fit, they deselect them. And they deselect them. They actually have the flexibility to do that. They send them, go talk to teachers.
No, I sub in.
You can send them right back into the traditional system when they don't work
I've met
out.
so many kids
Yeah.
one day
Yeah.
counsel them.
And so now, what do you end up with in the traditional schools? You end up with those young people who are the most challenging and so forth. The resources that used to exist have been drained off, further drained off because those resources are going to charter schools. So you're making a traditional system where the masses of the children still are worse, clearly worse. And so, you know, when we talk movements, we can't say to parents, you don't have a right to send your child to a charter school. We can't say that.
Stay the course.
But we gotta ask and try to form relationships even with those parents to say, we understand this is a good choice for your child and it's working and so forth. But look at what's happening with the majority. We still need your help.
There are some
to
that
support
definitely don't fit that, and they find out within the first year or so. And some of it, I've had arguments with teachers where we've had run-ins.
Yeah.
Where the teacher told my son, basically, you're not going to make it. And I came the next day and said, oh, he's going to make it, and you can't threaten him. I've had one teacher I had to do that with because he thought because he was a charter, he had ultimate power. Okay? And to do that to young black children, I felt was really wrong.
Yeah.
And me and him, we almost went toe to toe because I knew he was abusing his power. And I was with the black tiger moms and said, no, we're not dealing with that. You're not going to tell them that they can do anything they want.
I'm not really racist,
Yeah.
but
But you're going to get that kind of teacher anywhere, and you can get that in high school, and you're definitely going to find those people in college. The one thing that I liked is it said this: we're making sure you go to college. We want you to excel. We want you to dream to go to that point. That was the push that I did like about it. And like I said, there were good ones and bad ones, and yes, there's a board and they pick, and I wasn't crazy about that at all. And there's not a lot of social activity. That's cut out of it because it's mostly based on academics. You're right. But all that being said, the thing about it was I was thinking about what's in his best interest for now. And right now, I just want his academics and to think serious about going to college and being one of those young black men to go there and make it. And they were pushing that. But yes, there's negative things to that. There's negative things in a lot of schools. There's some schools that academic is great, but the violence is great. Or not violence is great, but the violence is too much. So they can't learn as much as they want to. There's some people, they've got books that are from 1960 and 1970, and it's 2014 right now, and they're learning out of that book. I also think it's the kid. If the kid wants to excel, they're going to push, no matter who pushes them behind, too. I think if the parents help as well and are part of their life, they might not be able to go to every meeting, but they have to know what's going on with their kid too.
No, I mean you touch on part of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the reality is they don't have to go, and they don't go. You're talking about the ideal.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the reality. Right? And I hear you. What needs to happen, and also I would caution against this idea that if the children want to and so forth. Motivation and inspiration and so forth that's not inborn, right? That's nurtured.
Right.
That's nurtured and cultivated. And so we got thousands upon thousands of young people who don't even know what you're talking about when you talk about nurturing and so forth. That's the reality that we got. So this is not directed at you as a parent who chose charter for your child and is working. I'm saying good. But then the question becomes, will you still join with others of us to advocate for, on behalf of, work on behalf of those children who don't have anybody work for them?
Whatever is the best interest to help them in a positive, whether it's charter or not charter, that's not the issue. The issue is the kid and being there for the kid. That's the issue.
Yes.
I worked in 33 school
after school doing reading room programs to help those kids. You find out you're 3rd and 4th grader and you're not even
can't
in
read.
1st grade, and they're faking the funk. They're sight reading, and I'd say a word to them. They didn't know what the heck they were doing.
So you see, I said
But
one
that's
of
where you
our,
gotta take them.
one of our goals
need them.
is to get focused with laser-like precision on literacy
Yep.
development.
Yep.
And people got a lot of stuff wrong. There's this popular mantra about, research shows that if they're not reading by 3rd grade, they're
Everyone's different.
yeah. But we shouldn't even think in those terms. What we gotta think is from the crib up, we gotta develop young people.
Statistics
Right?
lie, data doesn't tell us. We gotta.
We have to develop young people, and we have to have a systemic approach to it. Or nothing will change, not fundamentally, and it won't change, certainly won't change for the masses of young people. It'll change for some. Some are gonna make it smaller. If you pay close attention, the percentages of those who are truly competent with high school diplomas in their hands becoming smaller and smaller. And not because I say so, you can go see.
It's true.
You can go, it's clear.
Can-
Those,
Yeah, no,
Could I share something before
Sure.
we end?
yeah.
I'm from the libraries, so we weren't here when we did introductions. So I just wanted to share news that is a small piece to all of this, I think, but hopefully will help at least some kids. The libraries, 6 of the libraries in the city are having summer camps this year for the first time. We're partnering with the school district. They're actually supporting this financially for the libraries because we didn't have the money, but it's literacy camp. So it's 4 days a week for K through 6th grade. Arnett and Wheatley are both having camps here in the Southwest, and it's to stop that summer slide. It's to give those kids the support over the summer.
Probably getting
Hopefully,
Sully too, or no?
I believe Sully's. Yep.
Good.
So it's Arnett, Lincoln, Lyle, Maplewood, Sully, and Wheatley. So to help stop the summer slide, it's literacy based. They're going to be doing reading, writing, a little bit of math at least. And then of course they'll also be welcome and encouraged to join in the other regular library programs going on for all summer. And I have some flyers if anyone's interested in those. But
what's the time?
It varies.
The daily schedule?
it varies from depending on the branch.
Okay.
There you go.
So if I get one of them.
Sure. How many? I got about 10, I think.
3, because there's a teen program, there's after-school program at the Y.
I'd like to say to you, don't believe the district's hype about the so-called summer slide. That might be true for a relatively small number of young people, but most didn't have the skills in the first place. They're pretending that these young people are, that they're where they should be, that they have adequate skills and so forth, and then they lose all of this over the summer. No, they didn't have the foundation in the beginning.
Well, they need it all year round. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is one way we're
No,
trying to step in
this is
to
good.
help with the kids who can come to the
This
camp.
is good. I'm just saying that Rochester City School District is pushing this line. They're pushing this political line. That we're going to do this great thing. We're going to help with the summer learning loss.
At their doorstep.
Yeah, it's deeper than that. It's much deeper than that. They don't want. That's part of the problem. You have said it.
Yeah,
They don't want to tell the truth about how deep this is, how deep this crisis is. So they, put up a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? Oh, the reason why so many of our young people are not doing well on exams and so forth because they lose so much over the summer. No, they didn't have the foundational skills in the first place.
That's prime time to be reading. I have free time. That's what I
Well,
used to do in the summer.
I gave you another
Okay.
location 19 flyer. Join the location 19 and you can post
Okay.
things and make sure that, I always hope that people will post things themselves because I spend a lot of time posting things for them and I really would rather people do their own posting, and I'll be more than happy to, call me and we can talk you through something if you have any questions, but I'll try to make sure we get the word out for the race and education meeting on the 25th, and if you've got any, I left an email for Judith Davis
Okay.
to send any notes she may have, or if you've got notes from that meeting, so that we have an idea of what's been going on.
Okay.
Thank you for the update on that. 'Cause
Sure,
we-
absolutely.
That was great that you came in. We had just been talking about you, that you
Okay.
were involved with that group, and we see you walking up the driveway. Perfect
Okay.
timing.
All right, good, good.
Um,
So hopefully we'll
Any-
develop a working relationship. There's a lot
Before-
to be done.
Before we have our belated departure here, anything else that didn't get on the agenda that anybody wants to say a few quick things? No? Okay, great. Everybody signed in and checked themselves off. Great. Thank you all for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow night at the next meeting.
Yeah.